Good morning. It's 7:31 now at KXL.
This is a KXL News Alert.
With sports at 15 and 45, I'm Jay Allen.
Now, Bill O'Reilly's Talking Points on KXL.
Your first choice for news. News Radio 750 KXL.
Slugs are a real problem in Northwest gardens, and if you garden, you probably know that. This is a clump of daylilies that I was dividing, and unfortunately I had not put any bait down. You can see the damage that the slugs have done to this plant. For me, the choice that I use in my own garden is Corey's Meal. I like it, and always read and follow label directions, but you just want to put it lightly around the plants on damp soil. So evening is an ideal time. If you prefer not to use meal, there are pellets, and there's also Corey's Deadline. Look for the meta label on all Corey's products.
I'm Steve Leader.
And I'm Rebecca Marshall.
A late night crash is blamed on alcohol.
Just a few high clouds through the day today and then tonight.
We have a KXL traffic alert at 7:30.
Prices on existing homes are now projected.
Your first choice for news. News Radio 750 KXL.
In the Garden with Mike Darcy is brought to you in part by Moen Machinery, a Portland tradition since 1947, Meta, the active ingredient in Corey's and Deadline, Black Gold, all the riches of the earth, and Marquee, your casual living store. Well, here we are in the garden, my garden actually. Cody the garden dog is here, enjoying it even though we are having a little bit of rain. A few things I wanted to talk about today. One is hardy fuchsias. They're wonderful plants because they really do take a lot of sun. In fact, the one I have right here is in full sun in the summertime. It doesn't burn, and they bloom all summer long compared to the fuchsias we see in hanging baskets, which many times really need some shade. But the thing I really wanted to mention here is you can see this plant and how it's leafing out all along here. So this is one of the reasons that on hardy fuchsias, you don't want to prune them back until it's fairly late in the season like now. And then you do have some choices, because if I want this plant to stay tall, I could maybe only prune it off at the tip right here where this is died back. Or if I want to keep it down a little bit, I could prune down lower, like here, throw this away, and I've got all these new shoots coming up here. But what you do need to do, and this is what I like to tell people to wait, is when we have the winter with hardy fuchsias, you're never really sure how much they've been killed back from the cold. And that's a good example why you don't want to prune them all the way to the ground until spring is here and you can actually see how much they're leafing out. So I would probably take off all these excess twigs that are on here right now, and this is the time of year to do that. So that's one thing you can do with your hardy fuchsias. The next plant I want to mention is one of my favorites I've talked about on this show before. It's called Melianthus major, and this is one in my garden that actually froze clear to the ground, so there was nothing here. You can see the stem from last year. That's this right here. And I did know this one was probably dead clear to the ground, so I did prune it earlier, but you can see now all the new growth is coming up on it, and it's doing fine. Sometimes these plants had a reputation for being a little bit perhaps tender in the winter, but I've had no problem with mine. This is out in full sun, full exposure to cold, wind, wet, whatever, and it does fine. And probably by midsummer, this will be about, I would guess, around 5 feet tall. And the other plant I wanted to mention today is over there in a pot. It's a rosemary. It's a trailing rosemary. Rosemary is one of my favorite plants. I love the fragrance you get from them. But this one gets a lot of the hot afternoon sun in the summertime. And you can see in the pot it's in, it's just draping down like this in full bloom right now. And they will really keep blooming pretty much all summer long. It's really sort of a good plant to have in a container because they take the sun. If you forget to water them a little bit, they're pretty forgiving with regards to that. And they bloom and bloom really all summer long. If you go to garden centers now, you can see this one is a fairly light colored bloom on it. There are some that are very dark. So in my own garden, those are some things. And one other one just to mention real quick is this is one of the hardy hibiscus, and you can see right here, there's nothing here. This plant is alive, but this is one of those plants that's very, very late in coming up. So we can revisit this a little bit later in the season, and you'll see. So it's one of those plants you don't want to dig up just because it hasn't come up yet. So there's a few things to think about doing in your own garden.